Hello, everyone. Hello, coming to you from absolutely beautiful Portugal today. We have such a sunny and gorgeous day. Hello to everyone that's here, getting ready to come into the webinar for tonight. If you haven't joined us before, please know that we welcome all of your questions about moving to Portugal, everything from visa process to moving with your pets, families, or just how fantastic different elements of the culture are here, from food to traveling across Portugal. If you can, please log in and share your name and where you're coming to us from. I know it's Memorial Day weekend in the United States, so I hope everyone's having a great weekend and enjoying some quality time with family. Great to see you, Laura. Hello from Florida. I am on the Central Coast. My name is Colleen. I am the co-founder and CEO of Portugal the Place, and we are here in beautiful, sunny Silver Coast of Portugal in Alcobaça. So welcome. Hello, Phyllis from Texas. Great to see you. We're going to give everyone just a minute to get logged in here. After the whole process is completed and we finish this webinar, we will send out the recording to everyone. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, help us answer any questions that you may have. Hello from Colorado and Hillsborough. Hey, Lori. Good to see some Oregon folks out there. And for those of you that are here in Portugal, I hope you're enjoying this absolutely beautiful day as much as we have today. I even have a little touch of sun, even though I've got sunscreen on, because it's just been a glorious day outside and it's spring, and spring has sprung. So we love doing these webinars to be available to just talk straight about the process of moving to Portugal. So we're really, really excited to have everybody here. And again, the questions that you have are just great, because I know there's a lot of conflicting information out there. There's so many different things happening, from AI to Facebook groups and everything in between, that can just get really overwhelming. So we just have a conversation and see how we can help you sort it all out. One of the things that I wanted to share today is, the fact that we are seeing a lot of people that are talking about, there's kind of this feeling of maybe Americans in general aren't welcome in Portugal or in Europe, depending on how you're looking at it. There's a political climate right now that's making some things a little confusing. And I wanted to share, I spent a little bit of time with some Portuguese friends yesterday, and we were talking about this. We were talking about it right on the nose about, the political climate and what's going on. And it was really interesting on how open and generous of their thoughts and their opinions. But the one thing that came out crystal clear, and what we're seeing time and time again, is how kind and generous the Portuguese people that you meet are about the situation, about not taking everyone in as a collective, and being really welcoming of us as immigrants in Portugal, and as folks that are here living and integrating, learning the language, all of that. So it was really comforting and reassuring. I like to do a pulse check ever so often, because, I can't help it. You start to, even though I'm living it and I'm here every day and I'm with fantastic people from Portugal, it's interesting how it is still easy for it to creep into your head that maybe we're not as welcome as we think, or maybe there's a lot of conflict out there that we're not seeing. And, doing that kind of check-in and listening and paying attention to the news and how people are reacting to you is really great to feel, again, confident that everything is moving along, and that people are very, very generous in the way that they're responding, and kind. Another thing, hey, from Montana, I think I just saw Colorado go by as well. Welcome, everyone. Definitely feel free to put those chats in with your questions, and hello, greetings, hi. Because we are really excited to dig in and answer those questions. Another thing that I just wanted to put up that's top of mind is the new entry systems in Portugal and the lines at the airport. I'm getting a lot of questions before the webinar asking me what's happening and how it's feeling. And it is definitely across Europe, these new electronic entry systems that are supposed to make things easier have not been launched smoothly. There is just no way to get around that. So if you're planning to travel in and out of Portugal, or really any other EU country that's installed these gates, and you're traveling outside the EU into the EU, or vice versa, prepare for long lines. I just can't stress that enough. There is lines from in Amsterdam, in France, in Lisbon. I myself, we traveled in March and ended up caught in lines heading out to England, and we were in line for almost 4.5 hours. So, definitely keep that in mind when you are making your travel plans and when you're planning to move around, either coming over to relocate or if you're coming over on a scouting trip or planning that. There right now, they definitely have some backed up systems all across the EU. It is a reality. Portu's a little bit better. Portu's not as difficult as Lisbon. And then Faro can be much more difficult than Lisbon. So we're seeing different experiences for sure. But I wanted to put that out there too, because I've had people asking, and in my own lived experience, it was definitely stressful waiting in really extraordinarily long lines. What I am hearing though is that they're going to suspend using these machines because they're not working. So that actually could speed things up again too. You'll never know from one day to the next, but plan accordingly. So that's definitely something that has been brought up in questions. We're getting some questions from Facebook and from TikTok as well. So we're pushing those questions over. Another question that I've had is the all important question about the visa appointments in the United States with VFS, particularly San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and then the auxiliary offices such as Houston come up all the time. What can we do to get another appointment or to get an appointment secured? What's going on? The one thing that we can tell you is we saw a flurry of appointments become available in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. Those appointments were gobbled up very quickly. Now it seems like San Francisco slowed down a little, and now we're seeing appointments in Houston and we're seeing appointments in Washington, D.C. They are allowing the first visa applicant to have an appointment and then bringing the family with them. They are allowing that. So that's good. You're not needing to get appointments for every single person in the family, but it is quite a effort. For our clients, for example, we've added looking for the visa appointments for our clients. So not only are we coordinating that so that our clients are looking on their time zone and we're looking on ours, but that's giving us a daily preview of what it looks like right now. And so it seems like it's kind of shifted from the West Coast, from San Francisco, and moved on over to Washington, D.C. So, just if you're looking for an appointment, it is just balancing the amount of times you log in and look against getting locked out of the system. And it does happen. Appointments do get secured, but we recognize that it can feel a little overwhelming if you've been struggling to secure one. But we've been seeing them open up in different areas, and that has been encouraging, that they're hopeful that is going to be, something that's going to start opening back up again. All right. So we also have the IMA appointment questions. The IMA appointment is the other thing that people are asking about. Once you get approved for your visa and you move to Portugal, what are we seeing for your IMA appointments? It's still pretty consistent that you get about 50% of people get the appointment booked and given to them on their visa when they have it approved. And then we will have about 50% where they don't have an appointment. Those folks that don't have an appointment, we are seeing people that it is taking a couple months to get that secured. So definitely if you have an appointment, that's great. And then if you don't have one, you're going to have to start again looking for appointments. But we're seeing people getting appointments as far as 6 months or more out from their approval date. So Laura is asking, you're from Florida and you've been looking in Miami and Houston since Florida falls under DC. It said we can try DC and Houston, but no luck so far. Totally understand, Laura. We're seeing the same thing across the board, but we did just have a couple of folks able to secure an appointment. Some of the people are working with VisaBot, where they're paying for that service to get notified when an appointment comes through. We're seeing mixed results on the VisaBots. You do pay for that service, and it seems like about 50% of the people paying for it feel like they were able to get what they wanted from it. So depending on your sense of urgency, that is a route that you could consider, is subscribing to one of the bots that will look for the appointments. But then our team, and then in coordinating with folks, we're looking. And like I said, we saw some appointments open up. Again, it's kind of closed down again. but we're hopeful that it'll just continue to cycle. But hang in there. They will show up. We've had folks that just felt like nothing was going to open up, and then all of a sudden we were able to snag a bunch of appointments. So Lori's asking, can you clarify if the D7 visa only allows for passive income rather than a combo of passive and some working income? Will they deny a D7 if they see some employment income? So they won't deny a D7 if you have employment income. It's just what they will consider as verifiable income for that type of a visa. For example, if you have enough passive income, Lori, to, let's just round off to say you have €1,000 a month in passive income, that's enough for you to qualify for the visa. They're not going to deny you if you have additional earned income that you have through maybe a part-time job, consulting, your own small business, something like that. It's just in many cases that income won't be considered for the visa, but you're totally fine to have it. You can work, you can have the D7 with your passive income. It's just what they're going to allow. Now, if you don't have the full 1,000 a month for the first person in passive income, and you want to try to make a combination of passive income and earned income, that's where the trick it gets trickier. We have seen some D7 visas authorized or allowed when it is earned income through long-term payments by things like royalties, things by long contracts where they're kind of passive contracts where you're going to earn that money maybe on a maintenance side. Sometimes it's like managing social media accounts, things like that you have like a long-term contract. But in general, they're going to be looking that you have the minimum passive income. And then if you want to make additional money beyond that, that's great. It just won't be counted in the visa. All right. Hi, Anne. So if you're flying via Madrid connecting to Faro, where does one go through customs? I heard you say Faro is a long wait. Yes, Faro has had some frustratingly long wait times. So that is absolutely true. And so if you are flying, your first flight through for customs will be in Madrid. That could possibly help you. We've also been hearing of some issues in Madrid, but when you have the connecting flight and it's booked through, so you purchased your flight in the United States and then you booked yourself all the way to Faro and your first stop in the EU is Madrid, because that's a through flight, you will have priority. And so what we've been seeing is they've been pulling people through those lines and bringing them all the way through past people that are checking in for their very first flight. So it does help a little bit if you're on a through flight. We're not hearing as many people missing their connection when they have to clear customs in their first EU country. But it's definitely something to be aware of. Look at how tight that flight is. Really take a look at what that connecting time is and be completely prepared to hustle when you're moving between the two. But if you booked it all the way through as one continuous ticket, you're probably going to be okay, because they're going to give you priority to get you over to your next flight. And depending on when you're flying, they could have this resolved by just pausing this over the peak season and trying to get this all sorted out later in the year. So that's definitely something. So Patricia's asking, please explain the process or time frame of going from a D7 to a permanent resident. Okay, so I'm going to just make sure that we're all on the same page, because this is always the vernacular that gets really, really confusing. So the D7 or the D8, the D visas, these are the first step to being allowed to being a resident in Portugal. And so what that means is these are the visas that you apply for to show your different amounts of income, to show that you can sustain your lifestyle in Portugal. And you'll apply for those first through the United States or your home country. That's where you will apply for your first ability to get permission to move to Portugal. That's the visa. Then IMA, which is the immigration arm of Portugal. Once you have this visa, this travel visa, this temporary visa approved, it will be put in your passport and you'll have 120 days to travel. Then you will also need to have your IMA appointment, which will then be when you go in to get your residency card. But I really want to clarify here, this isn't permanent residency here. This is a 5-year temporary residency that you need to fulfill to be able to move to the next step, which is permanent residency. Okay, so you'll have the visa appointment in your home country. Then you have your first appointment in Portugal, which will be where you get your temporary residency, and you'll have a renewal process. It's 5 years total, with a renewal at 2 years and 3 years. Okay, so that's your renewal process. And then once you've fulfilled the 5 years and you've been able to demonstrate that you're still in good standing and a resident in Portugal, then you can apply for permanent residency. And that permanent residency requires that you show again that you have the means to support yourself in Portugal. And at that point, you'll be required for your language certification showing that you've accomplished an A2 level in Portuguese. And that would be after you've had your 5 years in Portugal. So I hope that that kind of gives you a overview, because it's actually 3 steps to get to that permanent residency. It's the temporary visa first, then it's your 5-year residency, which is called temporary residency, and then permanent residency kicks in as an opportunity after that, which then goes for 10 years. And it's a much simpler process to renew and can continue through perpetuity. So all right. Hey, Laura. So you'll be traveling to Portugal to scout for rentals during the first 2 weeks in June. Very excited. How plausible is it to obtain a rental agreement that is delayed to start later in the year while I go through the D7 visa process? The timing for getting the visa appointment is the key thing I need to sort these things out. It is not that feasible. I really want to make sure that you understand from the landlord's point of view. So what happens, and it makes total sense, you want to secure a visa but not really have to start paying for that lease until you have an appointment, because it's just months of unknown and expenses that you can't use. So a lot of folks are looking to be able to come over, get a lease secured, but not start the lease for, say, 4 more months or something like that. But there's no incentive for the landlord to lease to you to do that, because they would then fundamentally take their property off the market and have no income for months and have no guarantee that you're going to actually take that property. So that is why when you lease the property, you are completely responsible for it. So you will lease it, you'll be required to put the utilities in your name. And once the lease is active, then every month you will have that expense. And so it is a balancing act between having the appointment and getting the lease secured. Sometimes we are able to maybe, give ourselves like an extra month here and there, depending on when people are getting ready to offer the property. But in general, there's no incentive for them to sign a lease with you and then not get income on their property over those months. Now, the other thing is different in Portugal is they have to have one lease finished before another lease can start. So the way that the landlords are required to report the lease to make sure that it's legal, if they know someone's moving out in a year, they can't offer you a lease and have it running at the same time. There can only be one active lease on that address, on that property. So even if they know someone's moving out 8 months from now, they're not going to be able to initiate that lease until the lease is cleared and they can verify that it is possible to rent. So it is steps that we have to take, and completely recognize that without knowing when your visa appointment is, it feels very intimidating to know when to decide to take out a lease. But if you do have the lease, the good news is even if you find an appointment that is very quick turnaround, like 2 weeks, you can snag that appointment. And if you've got all your paperwork in order, you can just zip out to that and take care of it. So there's a balance of having the lease and or like waiting and then seeing a last minute appointment, but knowing that you don't have all your paperwork in order. So it's a balance that we work with you on. The other thing to note is once you have the property, if you have friends that want to come over and use it, if you want to fly back over on your tourist visa and set up your property and get it prepared, if there's things like that you want to do in the meantime, it is your property. So you're more than welcome to come back and forth. All right, so Nancy's saying, another company told me they have full success setting up annuities for clients to satisfy the D7 passive income requirement. How do you look at this? Well, there are financial planning companies that have shared that, and that they say that they are cross-border specialists that can set up a annuity to comply. And we have had people use that as a verifiable form of income, but it has to be a substantial amount. And the money that it's coming through has to really show that it's locked in, that you're receiving that money. You must be receiving it with 3 months before your appointment, you have to have verifiable deposits of income and assets. So if this is something that you need to do, some people do it, absolutely, and it can work. But remember, you're going to need that same income support showing for the IMA appointment. This is something that you're going to need to maintain. You're going to have proof of some type of income throughout the periods of time when you're here. So it's not like a short-term fix. It needs to be something you're comfortable with maintaining for a substantial amount of time, or you switch to another type of passive income. If you're like short of your retirement, for example, you can't get Social Security or something for a couple more years, some people will do this and then plan on their renewal to switch to proof of income being their Social Security. But you have to have a long-term plan. It can't be just to secure the D7 initial appointment. You need to make sure it covers your bases for the potential, a year later for your IMA appointment, 2 years later for your next first renewal. You really need to think it through long-term. So Beverly's saying, I'm going to be bringing 2 largish dogs in crates. Does your service help getting them from the airport to the new apartment? Absolutely. It's one of our favorite things is the picture with the 13 bags and the 2 crates and the van and, all of that. This is pretty typical. We've moved 12 parrots. We've moved 5 cats. We've moved all kinds of combinations, short of horses. We do need to get other equipment for a horse, but absolutely. We have drivers, vans. It's all part of the fun of getting you here and navigating that and making sure that we're prepared. We do a arrivals checklist to make sure we understand how many bags you're having, what are the sizes of them, what are the sizes of the crates, the timing of your landing, navigating the time that it takes to go through the vet check at the airport and coming out. So we coordinate all of that for sure. All right. And so it's funny because when people are talking about the dogs, it's we have 2 big dogs ourselves. My husband, Clyde, and I, we have a Newfie Doodle and we have a Bernie Doodle. And we brought our Newfie Doodle from the States. And to this day, I still think about the fact that probably one of the biggest things we coordinated trying to get over, it wasn't our 19-year-old daughter at the time. It wasn't my 83-year-old father. It literally was the dog. So totally appreciate the fact that it feels really stressful and intimidating. And the other thing we need to coordinate when we're talking about the dogs is thinking about the weather as well. As we're coming into the summer season, when you're scheduling flights with animals, you really have to pay attention to the time of year because there's heat limitations on when they will accept animals, even if you have a paid ticket. If the tarmac gets over 83 degrees, they'll refuse to take the animals. So preparing and knowing your area, doing night flights can help, making sure you're timing things so that you can be prepared, especially if your dogs are flying in the hold, because those animals will be out of your sight for a while. So just keep that in mind. So Anthony's asking, I think the prereqs for a visa appointment are proving the passive income, having a bank account in Portugal and showing proof of somewhere to live. Is that accurate? Mostly, yes. You need to have, depending on the visa, there's different requirements of income. So D7 to D8, for example, have different income thresholds. You do need to have a Portuguese bank account that is funded. That Portuguese bank account needs to have equivalent to 1 year's worth of minimum wage in Portugal minimum. So for one person, that's around 12,000 euros that needs to be in that account. We really don't recommend that you run the margins. Your visa application looks stronger if you can be above that. And then if you're looking for proof of somewhere to live, the application is not just somewhere to live. It is a legal and licensed lease that is valid for a minimum of 12 months. And now they are requiring verification of notarized signatures and a statement from the landlord saying you are actually planning to live in the place that you've leased, that it's not just a throwaway for the visa. So no Airbnbs, no like half term. You have to have a legal and licensed registered lease with deposits and showing these additional documents. You also will need to have insurance, proof of an insurance that's required, a visa insurance for this gap period of time between the approval and when you end up on the health system in Portugal. An FBI background check is also required. And then there's a bunch of other paperwork that you're going to need that will have a variety of proofs and things that you do. But passive income, and that income has to have 3 months of deposits before your appointment. The bank account funded in Portugal, you need a NIF, which is your tax identification number in Portugal, and you need to have proof of accommodation through a lease. You can also purchase a home, and that home's promissory contract is sufficient, and it needs to be funded. So it needs to show that you've made the 10% deposit. So you have the choice of leasing or purchasing. And our company runs through everything. So included in everything we do is every single step of coordinating the complex steps of making sure that it's all in order. And we are now offering everything from the NIF to the bank account to the visa, search for the appointment, support for the IMA appointment, and everything through renewals. So all of the steps are included along with finding the property for you. All right. Hey, Deanna, at what point do you have to have the lease in place? Is it at the time of the appointment for the D7 visa? Yes. Yes. So if you're going through a VFS appointment, VFS being San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Miami, Houston in the United States, you need to, you can make an appointment without having the paperwork. And then when you go to the appointment, you have to have it all. If you're with e-visa, which New Jersey is the significant one that e-visa operates, you need all the paperwork in place, and then you apply for an appointment, uploading all the documents, they verify that you have them, and then you can get an appointment. But you absolutely need to have the proof of accommodation when you go in for your appointment. All right, so let's see. Well, they're asking on Instagram, without satisfying language requirement, can one stay on as a temporary resident beyond 5 years? Absolutely. We know some folks that have been here almost 30 years that have decided for a variety of reasons never to pursue permanent residency. It's absolutely an option. It's just at a certain point, it's, you know, the continual feeling of constantly renewing paperwork and things like that, which is the trade-off. For folks that are concerned about the language, which is valid, it is, and you know, Portuguese is not the easiest language to learn, and it can feel really intimidating. They do offer classes through the government that you can take, that you have mandatory attendance for A1 and A2, but if you complete those classes, you'll be given a certification. You don't need to take a test that will show that you've satisfied your language requirement. You can do that in that 5-year period or any time after that to satisfy that language. It goes right into your portal and shows that you have that language skill. Or you can take private classes, which can accelerate that process. So if your goal was to become a permanent resident, there are ways, if you're not comfortable with the idea of really getting fluent in the language, there are ways to fulfill that language requirement for sure. So Natasha's asking, can you coordinate for furniture? That's a mouthful. Can you coordinate 4 furniture deliveries before our arrival? Absolutely. It's one of the things we do that we really love helping everyone get ready for. That's our welcome stage. And so once you've either rented a property or you've purchased a property, our team works with you to help you order everything you need to get the place set up. We receive all of the deliveries either at our office, or we coordinate to meet you at your home, meet the deliveries at your home before you've arrived. And when you purchase property with us, and even on some rentals, sometimes you need more significant things like perhaps air conditioning installed, or you want to buy a new appliance like a washing machine or a dryer. You need to coordinate some kind of maintenance or something on the property. We handle all of that as well before you arrive, so that when you get here, you'll have many of those steps taken care of. So that is one of the things that makes me laugh. I come into my office and there'll be like Emma mattresses stacked up everywhere and boxes from IKEA and Amazon and everything in between. And sometimes I think we look like a UPS office, but that's what we do to make sure that you all are set and ready and comfortable as you can be when you arrive in your new home. All right, so Robin's asking, I use a mobility scooter. Does your service help disabled people? Absolutely. We have folks that come from a variety of situations. We would definitely need to have a really good conversation about the scooter that you use, the charging mechanism that it has, and then we'd want to work and support you in making sure we found the right place for you, not just for your living quality of life, but also for the community quality of life. There are very different towns in Portugal, depending on where you land, that are more compatible and accessible than others. So that would be something that we would do. And one of the things we do, and we're very in tune with folks, is we're not going to just be like, okay, where do you want to live? Great, we'll go out and find it. Our goal is to be here for your whole transition to your life in Portugal. We are your experts, your advisors. So we're going to make suggestions and help really realistically get you settled into a budget that makes sense. Be very real about expenses to be prepared for. And in this situation, really talk frankly about what is accessibility, what type of location do you need, what does it mean using that scooter for you? Do you want to have complete freedom of going out every day and exploring, or is it more for when you get tired but you don't need it all the time? There's a lot of different nuances to this, and we've helped a lot of folks that have relocated here, and we're very proud of that because it's something where it can be very concerning. Like if you don't land in the right spot, the last thing we want is for someone to be isolated or put themselves in harm's way. So Laura is asking, a regular US passport allows for 90 days of travel without a visa. When you get the D7 visa, does that 120 days run concurrently in Portugal, or does the visa just override the 90 days and you get 120 days? So for most folks, the 90-day tourist visa is for the entire EU, and it's a rolling calendar. So depending on how often you visited the EU and how many days, you may not have an entirety of 90 days left on your ability to travel. So for example, if you came over to Portugal for 2 weeks, that 2 weeks would be gone off of your 90 days because you've already used that. It's a rolling calendar, and it's something that you'll get used to looking at once you live here and you kind of get used to the whole EU thing. But the 120 days, it's not 90 plus 120 days. It just goes on from that moment. You have 120 days to move to Portugal. So you don't pick up 90 and then 120. Whatever you have left is just overridden, and you have 120 days to move from the issuance of that visa. All right, so what's the school day hours in Portugal, and what months are summer breaks? So, excuse me, just a moment. Sorry about that. So the school days in Portugal can vary depending on the district, but in general, they're similar to the US for the little ones, where they're bringing the kids to school at about 8:30 in the morning, and then the children are getting out of school around 4 o'clock in that period of time, give or take, depending on the school, if it's private or public. When the children go outside of middle school and then up into their high school years, you will get a longer break in the middle of the day, and the classes can go later into 5 or even 6 o'clock, and they will have a longer break in the middle of the day, a longer kind of lunch break that they're going to be able to take. But school, for most of the districts in Portugal, they are going to be on our traditional summer schedule. They're going to get out here in a couple weeks, the first or second week of June, and then they'll go back to school the first or second week of September, depending on the district. So that part can feel pretty familiar. They get the whole summer for the break. One thing that's really different here is when the school's out, the school is out. You do not have teachers in school. You don't have anyone there at the building. It is completely out. So like doing school visits and tours and things in the summer just really aren't options. You need to set those up during the school year. So Anne is asking, what is involved in the initial steps of working with your company? For example, we want to explore possible neighborhoods to live or rent in Lisbon. Do you provide information on neighborhoods, for example, in working with you versus a tour company to explore? How could we organize such things? That's a great question, Anne. So that's exactly what we do. Our very first service that we do is location immersion. And so it isn't a tour as in like castles and wineries and things like that. Our goal is to work with you before you arrive to understand what your potential life could be in Portugal. Are you outdoor activists? Are you dining and shopping and culture? Do you want to walk everywhere? Do you want to own a car? What are your medical concerns? Do you want a pet? All kinds of questions that we get to know you. And then based on your interests, your potential budget, what you're hoping to have as your lifestyle in Portugal, we will put together a suggested days of itineraries And those itineraries are then set and hosted by our experts that live in these regions. And those days then are set up so that you can see real neighborhoods, places where the everyday people that live in Portugal live, because you'll see other parts of the city and we help you with your itinerary on the days when you're not with us. And we really encourage you to go out and explore and enjoy and sit in the cafes and do all the wonderful things that we want you to do, to connect with Portugal. But on our days, it's really important that we get you into the neighborhoods, into understanding how things work, how things are connected, how pharmacies and groceries and living car-free, or if you want to live rural, what that would look like, what towns are connected. If you're in Lisbon, which one gives you different kinds of experiences? There's some very vibrant nightlife type of neighborhoods, and then there's some very calm, quiet neighborhoods around Monsanto's Park. All of those different elements doesn't matter where in Portugal. We have experts located in the Algarve. We have experts up in Porto, Lisbon, Silver Coast, Coimbra, all across the country that can then take you through it. And we also encourage you to compare, to really, okay, I think I want to live in Lisbon, for example, but then maybe I need to look at Setúbal, maybe going across the river and down on the Setúbal Peninsula for 45 minutes away. I want to see a different type of lifestyle. So we do a whole itinerary with you. We work through the whole entire process to understand what your particular needs are. And then we tailor that itinerary and experience to you. And then you're with Portuguese people that are sharing the background, the questions are answered, and you're also getting really connected with what your life could look like if you decided to choose Portugal. So Patricia's asking, do most rentals have a washer and dryer? No. Most rentals have a washing machine now. We're seeing more and more that have washing machines, but dryers are not as typical. You may see machines that are called combos, where those are like extractors, where they will kind of dry your clothes to about 95%-ish, but they take a really long time. I mean, we're talking hours. So most of us, and I was really concerned about the dryer thing when I first moved here. Now 6 years later, I don't even think about it. Most of us, we hang out our laundry, and it's amazing how quick that goes, and year round, it just has become typical for us. But in most rentals, you're looking at a washing machine pretty consistently, but perhaps a combo, very rarely a standalone vented dryer. So Laura's asking, I've worked with about 5 of your staff and partners and have been very impressed. It definitely takes a weight off my mind. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, everybody's goal is to get you through a kind of bumpy and intimidating process as smoothly as possible, and know that you have community here right at the very beginning. We have a team of 20 people total at Portugal the Place, with a core team in the Alcobaça offices of 10. So it's really all of our goal. It's just to be there to experience this whole process with you, and then know that you're ready to go and you can hit the ground running, for sure. All right. So Jillian is asking, do you help with obtaining baggage certificates for in-flight versus shipping? And when should I apply for said certificate? A VFS appointment or after the D7 visa is issued? So yes, we do. And you'll have to apply after you've had your visa issued. So that's the proof that says that you're going to be bringing these items with you. So when that day comes, we can get on that and get that taken care of for you and help you go through that process for sure. All right. Can you leave the EU and go to the UK to reset your 90-day US passport visa? Nope. Doesn't work that way. The 90-day rolling calendar is just in the EU. It doesn't have anything to do with leaving and coming back. It's just how many times you've entered the EU and when did you leave. So if you have a 90-day tourist visa and you came over, for example, and stayed for a month, you would have 60 days left, but it's a rolling calendar. So at 180 days, you'd start to pick up days on the back. In the meantime, it doesn't matter if you flew over to the UK and came back 3 days later, you would just continue using up those days. So there's no reset. It doesn't work like that. So it's really important that there are calculators. You can go online and you can look at a variety of Schengen calculators. And I would really suggest, if you haven't really paid attention to this, because it's never been that significant in the past, to kind of use that, go into your passport, look at your last entry stamp and exits, enter that information in, and it'll tell you exactly how many days that you have in country or in the EU. All right, so Timothy's asking, my main retirement account, US based, won't deposit directly into foreign bank accounts. We'll post a hard copy check each month to a foreign address. Do your financial advisors who can talk through the best way to establish financial pipeline from US assets to Portuguese financial institutions, looking to make it a more elegant than a check-in and envelope? Yes. So there's a couple of different ways. First off, it's totally fine that your income doesn't deposit into the Portuguese bank account. If you keep an American bank account and then you have it set up for an automatic transfer to your Portuguese, that's fine if they see the deposit, and you can match that deposit to proof that you get that retirement account information. So you just want to make sure that you have access to the monthly statement, and then that transfer from your American bank account over to your Portuguese bank account is fine. That's totally sufficient. Lots of people do that for a variety of reasons. There are other ways that you can set up with a currency converters. So you can have like a currency converters that will create an account that is like a US account number that you can have that check deposited to, and then that can go directly to your account as well. That's two benefits. One, that will be set up as an automated function, and then also it can help you really work on that exchange rate. So those different types of services are readily available, and we have folks that can walk you through how best to set that up. But there's definitely a lot of people that are dealing with that. So we see it quite often where they keep a US bank account or they use a currency conversion fund to be able to make that happen monthly for you. So we're getting another question that's coming in, and this one is really interesting. Is they're looking to travel in June, and June's right around the corner, and June is festival season. So I just want to kind of give you a heads up. And I know there's some folks that I saw that logged in that are here in Portugal. And so I don't know if they've been here long enough to go through a full festival season, but June is the beginning of a fantastic time in Portugal. But if you're coming over to scout, or if you're starting to think about like coming over to look at things, we want to be strategic about the timing, because almost every town, place in Portugal has got some type of local festival or event that is just fun and amazing, and you get to see so many different things happening, but it also can be a little disruptive to normal day-to-day business. So we have Corpus Christi holiday coming up on the 4th, and then we have Portugal Day, which is kind of like 4th of July, on the 10th of June. So if you're working with folks that are in Portugal, it's important to note that on the 4th and the 10th, the offices will be closed, banks will be closed. These are significant days on the Portuguese holiday calendar. So yes, June is definitely, you've heard right, June is a holiday time. And then local municipalities and local cities will have festivals running in June. So Lisbon and Porto have famous festivals that happen in June. Faro also does a big event, and then every town and city. I mean, our little town of São Martinho de Porto, which is just down the road a bit, they have the São Antonio Festival in June, and it's like a week-long party with bands and food and pigs rotating on spits and parades and all kinds of things. And so the town, even though a couple of days of the week are not completely closed down, it's really hard to get a hold of anyone. So if you're coming in June, definitely enjoy that. Don't be afraid to go out and experience it and watch and listen. The music, the food, it's fantastic, but allow some space. And if you are looking to get any business done, like needing to go to banks, lawyers, things like that, the 4th and the 10th will absolutely not be business days. So just keep that in mind as you are, planning your time. Another thing to note, just bumping onto that, is August is in Europe is the time when everyone takes holiday. And so you will find a lot of professionals, a lot of people in August, from real estate agents to lawyers to accountants, everyone will take a good couple weeks vacation. They will be completely gone. And one thing that the Europeans do really well is when they're on vacation, they're on vacation. The phones go off, they don't answer messages, they don't answer emails, and they're offline. So August can be a month where it can feel a little dark over here on getting answers, on getting information. Portugal, the place stays open during August, but who we work with, like landlords, accountants, attorneys, things like that, a lot of those people are going on vacations. So we really advise, if you're looking for accelerating something or finalizing something, trying to get it done either before August or after, just to keep those expectations well in check, because August is definitely holiday time in Europe. The beaches are full, the restaurants are full, people are traveling, and they take it very, very seriously. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the process. All right. Hi, Phyllis. Yes, the Portuguese banks are insured. They do have their insurance levels as well. So they have the National Bank of Portugal, and it is insured. And then they have some very, very tight regulations on ownership and lending. So absolutely, you have EU layered on top of Portugal. So that's something I think people kind of are not as familiar with, is Portugal is a member of the EU, and the EU has some very significant requirements of privacy, security, financial integrity, in all kinds of different layers that all of the EU countries require their national banks to comply to. So it's very well regulated. So Laura is also saying, I also saw there's a strike plan starting June 3rd that may affect transportation. Yes. So according to what we're being told, there's supposed to be a strike that's coming out. TAP Airlines is saying that they are going to strike. We've seen baggage handling say that they're going to have some strikes. It'll be interesting to see. A lot of times this is when they say they're going to have them, and then they're able to come to the table and resolve their differences. If not, that's also something to watch the news for and be prepared for. But we've seen these announcements before, and they haven't amounted to anything. And then occasionally they do. So it's just watching and being prepared. There's a wage disparity. A lot of people are very frustrated with the stagnant state of wages. And that's definitely happening across the world, across Europe. And so most of these strikes are through trying to really get out there and be advocates for increased wages. So Jay is asking, can you get health insurance before your D7 visa? I'm curious how much my medication would cost, and if so, how difficult is it to get a doctor's appointment? So those are a couple of different questions. So if you have secured a residency in Portugal, either a confirmed long-term lease, or you have purchased a home and that's a registered final deed has happened, you can then, whether you live in Portugal or not, apply for private health insurance. But private health insurance doesn't have any effect on your medication, because medication in Portugal is a right of every resident in Portugal if they're in the system. So this is where it gets a little confusing. You could have private health insurance and get doctor's appointments through the private system with your health insurance with no issue, depending on what your situation is. You can come over, use the health system, use the private health system. But until you have your IMA appointment and you have your residency, you won't be on what's called the SNS system. You won't be on the national health system. The national health system is where you get access to the prescription rates and the public system. So in between, in that gap, you're going to want to budget for what your cash pay for your prescriptions would be. Now, the good news is most of the prescriptions, even cash pay, are so much lower than what people are paying in the States that it isn't even something that they're concerned about. And diabetics will tell you all the time that the medication is just ridiculously less than what they've been paying, even with copays in the States. So you can check the cost of the medication. You can go online and you can run those medications through and ask what the current cash pay price for that medicine is in Portugal. And that should give you something you can budget for until you're on the system. And then once you're on the system, your private or public health insurance doesn't affect the cost of prescriptions. It's all regulated by the state. So Nicholas is asking, can you tell us a little bit about the home buying process? Absolutely. So home buying process in Portugal is, there's some significant differences in Europe and in Portugal to the United States. I think one of the most significant differences is the fact that you will not have earnest money and an escrow company in Portugal. The typical process of purchasing a home, and I cannot stress this enough, whether you work with us or you don't, please, please, please hear this. You will be asked, and it is totally typical, to put 10% down upon acceptance of the offer once the promissory contract has been drawn up. Everything is negotiated up front, okay? Everything, your terms, when you're going to close, the price, what's included, everything is negotiated up front. Once both parties have signed that contract, the buyer will be required to transfer 10% of the purchase price to the seller's account. And at that point, that money is non-refundable. It is not a jumping off point for negotiations. At that point, you have fundamentally bought the house, and then everything else is just waiting for closing dates and agreed upon terms, whatever was in the contract. It sounds a little intimidating to folks, but it is a very, very respected contract. It is the way it's been done in Portugal for years. The important thing here to note is you should not transfer money until you have a signed contract by both parties, and it should be, I cannot advocate enough for making sure you have a vetted real estate attorney working on your behalf. I see these comments and posts in social media all the time where people are like, I lost money, I sent them this, they told me they just needed 10,000. I can't understand why you would go to a foreign country and not have legal representation to make sure everything was done properly, T's crossed, I's dotted. So that's the first thing, is it's normal, it's typical, it's what we do, is we help you through that whole process to make sure everything is aligned, and we have vetted professionals to work with. But it's really important to note that that's the process you're going to start with. Then the final deed is really just signing the paperwork, and whether you have a mortgage or cash, that's when the final transaction is taken care of. Another significant difference on purchasing homes is the fact that there is no MLS in Portugal, and there are no comp systems in Portugal. So that can feel very strange because there's a lot of emotional equity in properties. And so you can have two properties right next to each other, look like they should be identical, and they can have significant price differences because of the way people price their homes. It isn't as scientific, and it isn't using that kind of a comp system with public facing information that you have with the MLS system in the States. So that's something that also can feel a little confusing. Another thing to note about purchasing, and this is something, if you're interested in purchasing a property at all, I really encourage you to schedule a call. I'm happy to go over the process with you because there are so many independent steps that we'll go over again and again to make sure you're educated and prepared. But for example, most homes are not set up, and most people don't expect that you will negotiate after having an inspection done. You will have an accepted offer, you will have a promissory contract, and you will have an inspection, but that inspection is not used as a tool to negotiate another price. So that's something that people really have to understand. We really, like in our case, we try to make sure the home inspections are done before any money is exchanged. So if you intend to withdraw because of a significant finding, you can do that before the money's exchanged without any loss of funds. So there's lots of different processes in the ways that you do it. It's just there's a different order, there's a different step-by-step way of communicating. Almost every house is negotiable except for new construction. New construction isn't typically negotiable, but how that's done, there's no key like 20% less than asking. There's nothing like that. It's case by case. And then, there's other nuanced things as well. well on how we go about getting you into position for success. Then really when you get into the home purchasing process is being aware that real estate agents don't hold the keys in Portugal. You're not going to see lock boxes and lots of signs on houses and things. It takes 2 to 3 days to coordinate visits to be able to make sure that we can get into these properties. And many times the owners will be there even though the agent has come along. And that can feel kind of odd because the owners walk around with you and everything. So that also feels a little different. And the fact that you can't just spontaneously go to a house because the agents have a lockbox code. So there's a lot of different things like that will might feel a little odd at first, but it's totally typical here and works. And that's one of the things we're really proud of, is being able to bring you through that whole process and give you that confidence and education before we even start on the purchase part of it. So Anthony is saying, I see the energy ratings on homes A to F. What letter and above would meet the standards we're used to in the US? Like in a 100-year-old house with radiator heat in Philly, and it's fine. That's a great question. That is a fantastic question. And it's really interesting because those energy ratings are completely subjective as well. The way the energy ratings are done is they will come and they will have an inspection done on the property to get that certification. So the inspector will come and it could have a house that is in great condition. It could have double glazed windows, a heat pump, brand new roof, insulation. It can have all of the things that you would think would get an A+ rating. But later the energy certificate comes back and it's like a C or a B. Well, maybe those people had grandma's fridge plugged in the garage and were running an old refrigerator, or they had something like that. And that'll ding them on the energy certificate, even though that appliance isn't even there when you get the house. So there's some things, that's just a simple example, but there's a lot of subjectiveness to these energy ratings. Now, if you are renting and you're not planning on doing any improvements to a property, I would encourage C and above, because at that point it has the basic fundamental requirements to keep the home comfortable to a point. When you start getting below that, single pane windows, no heat source, old style construction with no insulation, things like that, we need to really look at the house itself and then use the energy rating as well. The energy rating unto itself is not always indicative of the quality of the house. Another reason is if the house had an energy rating of a D, for example, and then the people have gone about and remodeled the whole house, put new windows in, put new heating system in, done all kinds of things, they don't have a new rating. They have to wait for somebody, they have to request it and then wait for months and months for somebody to come back out and reevaluate it. So it could be sitting with a D rating, but had all kinds of upgrades done in the meantime that would make it a very comfortable home. So we need to look at it as a little bit of a guide, but it's not the end all kind of understanding of what that house is potentially going to feel like. And another thing is to know there's something called exempt. So the energy exempt has a lot to do with when the house was built. There's certain homes that are exempt due to age or historic status, something like that. But the one place I would say that the energy rating is key, new construction. If you've got a new apartment, brand new place, it's never been lived in before, and that is not coming in an A, there is something significantly wrong with the construction of that place, because there's no excuse in this day and age with all the technology and everything for new construction not to be coming in with an A rating. All right. So I know talking about purchasing homes feels like just a ton of information, and I always get a little worried about fire hosing people and giving people that feeling that it's just too much information to get involved in. But really what we love to do is help get folks prepared and educated. So if you're trying to decide between renting and purchasing, if you want to understand the combination, that's the perfect time to connect with us and to start talking about what that looks like, because it is a very step-by-step process, and there's pros and cons for both. So if you're on the fence, not sure, right now Portugal is an amazing country for investing in real estate. It's one of the most solid markets in Europe. It has had progressive growth in the real estate market year over year. There are still opportunities to be had, and there's just a lot of benefits to that investment. Flip side, for some people, renting makes the most sense. And because we're not real estate agents, because we don't make commission, and because we work on your behalf as part of the whole relocation process, whether you rent or purchase to us, it doesn't make any difference. We're not going to try to convince you to do one thing or the other. It's just important that you have all the information you need to make that educated decision. And then even after we do all of that, sometimes hiccups happen. Sometimes things can come up, and our team continues to be there for you and to be a resource and to stay with you through all of the ups and downs of what it's like to relocate to a foreign country, and support you and know that we're there and able to walk beside you as you're making all these really important decisions. So definitely something we love to chat with you about and help you navigate those questions. So I think we've had, wow, that hour just like, whew, it just flew by. I just absolutely love having a chance to chat with everybody. I know that there's just a lot of questions and confusion that sometimes are hard to answer here. We've had some questions pop up that are a little bit more specific to individuals, and I would really, really encourage you to schedule a call so we can talk about those nuanced, very specific requirements one-on-one. And then have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy your holiday. And I hope that all of you that are considering looking at Portugal as your potential next chapter will really take from this the fact that it's not perfect. Portugal isn't going to be the perfect answer to everything that might be concerning you, but it is a country of kindness, of safety, and a place that really just can feel like an amazing adventure in a new culture, and a place that will really feel like home. So yes, the recording will be available. We're going to be sending this out via email to everybody that registered. So don't worry, we're going to get that out, Pat. And it takes a little bit to render, and we'll have that out right away. Gretchen, so great to see you. Phyllis, thank you so much for being here. And if you need anything, we're all here. Our team is ready and available to answer questions. And we have another webinar coming up in June, the third Sunday in June, same time, same place. And thank you again. And we will all see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye now.